In this video, I'm going to go over some parts of this book. I haven't read the entire book, but I've come across very important information. The sports gene, notice they have a black person on the cover. He looks kind of like he's a bowl-shaped person. On the back, they have a more athletic female kind of figure. And this has everything to do with the direction of humanity, and it starts to question the line between men and women at some points and so on. So before I begin, I'd like to highlight that the sun symbolism is key with the Igbos and the Biafra, the Bight of Biafra, where a lot of slaves were said to come from, millions of them. And basically in the movie Tears of the Sun, they talk about how the Fulanis would comb heaven and earth for the true Igbo king. Now why? Ask yourself why. Is it just some kind of symbolic victory? You know, they found the king of the Igbos. They've killed him. Symbolism, right? There's something to be said about that, absolutely. But it's more of the spiritual value, and it goes beyond spiritual symbolism. He is not the symbolic leader. He is the martial arts continuity. He is the sun. He is the only one who could transform the Igbo peoples into great warriors. And I'm not just talking about in Africa. I'm talking about in Jamaica, in Haiti, in Trinidad, in Cuba, in Brazil, and on and on and on, right? All over the world. The Igbo people can only be transformed into a great and efficient fighting force through me. And ultimately, when you've done your research, you realize that this is, the sports gene is actually referring to the Igbo gene on the highest level, okay, the Igbo warrior gene. In fact, in this book, there's a chapter called The Warrior-Slave Theory of Jamaican Sprinting. Okay, and of course, the cheetah differs from the leopard, but the leopard is also fast, and he runs through the trees fast. He has a combination of skills, and the most important is the ability to strike unpredictably and effectively. Strategy, speed, and physical contact. So running is important. My father was a sprinter, not the best that there ever was, but he was a combination of things, right? A brain surgeon who was a sprinter, who took martial arts in his life, who's from the royal family of Eri, right, which is the true royal family. I mean, anybody who would argue that the Neri guys who focus more on this world are the true spiritual continuity of the Igbo people is out of their minds. I have no tolerance for that kind of stupidity. Certainly the people who believe that out of the major village, and the people who believe that from the sky down, came Jacob Eri, who had children and had his cult center in this particular village. Okay, so it's insane not to see it my way. Okay, so when we look at page 164, The Warrior-Slave Theory of Jamaican Sprinting, I'm just going to read it to you, and we're going to talk about the warriors have principles, right? The princess complex, and how she's removed the idea of being a princess, which means she's with the prince, which goes back to the prince's pole, which goes back to the grace that they're subtly referring to, that they're trying to express through Western illusion and elegance, right? Okay, so now they refer to other groups of people, but you have to keep in mind, I want you to remember this part, write it down, in fact. The author's name is Malcolm Gladwell. Malcolm Gladwell, right? Is he going to refer to the biggest Christian tribe in Africa as the most proficient warriors? Why or why not? Malcolm, Islam? Think about it. Of course he's not going to do that. However, he does subtly refer to it. Page 163 at the bottom. After taking over from the Spanish, the British furiously ramped up slave importation, bringing Africans by the thousands from locations that correspond to modern-day Ghana and Nigeria. They're talking about at this point. Overall, there was several million from the Bight of Biafra alone. Many came from ethnic groups expert in warfare. Okay? Many came from ethnic groups that were expert in warfare. Are these guys just kind of big brutes swinging a spear? Or are they expert tacticians? Is it limited to ambushes? How preposterous would it be to make that argument? Certainly, they are the most proficient martial artists on the planet, and we'll get into that right here. Even from the view of the colonists who came, the sun never sets on the British Empire, right? These people seen people from all over the world, and look at how they describe these people, like the Coromantee of Ghana, sometimes sold into slavery by rival people who capture them, right? Coromantee. Contemporary letters from British officials show deep respect for the Coromantee, whom one British governor in Jamaica called born heroes, implacably revengeful when ill-treated. Born heroes. Born heroes. And dangerous inmates of a West Indian plantation. These are quotes. Another Brit, writing in the 18th century, said that these Gold Coast Negroes, quote unquote, were distinguished by firmness both of body and mind, a ferociousness of disposition, an elevation of the soul which prompts them to enterprises of difficulty and danger. This is probably the most respectable description of any group of people I have ever come across in all of my research. Now, they're referring to the people that are by the Igbos. Okay, that is important to note. Okay, however, if you note who this person is, right? I don't know from the top of my head, but I bet you that these Ghanaians have some kind of connection to Islam. If not, this guy who wants black people to be Muslims, obviously, is avoiding any Igbo kind of literature, recording, quotes that describe Igbo people on purpose, ultimately to elevate non-Christians above Christians. Now, was it a Ghanaian? Do Ghanaians score the top in America? No, it's Nigerians, and specifically Igbos are the most educated group of people in America. Last time I checked, right? My dad's a brain surgeon. My uncle who passed away graduated top of his class from in his law school at Santa Clara State. He went to UC Berkeley as well. My other uncle is also a doctor, and so on and so forth. Okay. Both my brothers have degrees, I have degrees, so on and so forth, right? These are educated people, the most educated African people. Is a bunch of geeky Urkels from the heart of Africa, or are these martial artists who are smarter than these other people like the Coromantee, right? Mind, body, and soul, okay? I would outsmart them. I am more physically gifted than they are. Surgic, the leopard is the surgeon, okay? So don't make the mistake of thinking, because that's how they're described, that they are the peak of African martial arts. No, it is the Igbos. We'll get to that shortly. In the 1670s, as slaves were increasingly brought to Jamaica and increasingly fled to join the burgeoning communities in the mountains, the Maroons burned sugarcane fields, painting the night sky with the color of their intention. No flame is more alarming than a cane fire, wrote William Beckford, an Englishman living in Jamaica. The fury and velocity with which it burns and communicates cannot possibly be described. From those bold Coromantee came the military genius known as Captain Cudjoe. Cudjoe, along with Nanny, the female leader of Maroons on the east side of the island, created an elaborate spying system that employed Maroon soldiers and slaves on plantations to track the movements of British soldiers. When the British ventured into the cockpit country to retrieve runaway slaves, Cudjoe's fighters ambushed them, not merely beating them back despite their superior numbers, but building an army with the weapons they seized. This is a smaller force ambushing a larger force with martial arts tactics, surely. The battles were so lopsided that the soldiers of the vaunted British Empire wrote, one English planter, dare not look the Maroons, in parentheses, in the face in equal numbers. That British dread is still embedded in the local names of cockpit country districts. Of course, these are northern Europeans. These are the tall Europeans, right? Is it height alone? How despicable is that argument made? Is this a black person saying this? No, it is a British person saying this. These are the trained British army that went around the world colonizing the world. Okay, so let me hold it there for a moment, so I don't want to hear any excuse. Oh, he flashed it quickly on purpose. Okay, 3. This is the top of the page. 3, 2, 1. Okay. Pitt Saladis met the colonel to discuss DNA. Okay, the climatic battle occurred in 1738, just a short stroll from where Pitt Saladis met the colonel to discuss DNA collection. So he talks about how he had to talk to witch doctors to get permission. So these people are firmly under the control of witch doctors and not martial artists. That's also why they are also outside of the divine order, among other reasons. A band of Cujo's soldiers hid in a limestone cave now called Peace Cave and placed a loose rock on the path outside. So a lot of people don't know that my royal family sided with the Christians spiritually, not in terms of slave trading. They were not slave trading, mind you. This is part of why the Christians chose my village and my family. Okay, the major argument was the worldly slave traders with Neri, okay, versus the true morality of the sky god, so to speak. Chukwu, right, and Eri versus Neri. So when it came a matter of everyone's teaming up together, and there are a bunch of worldly slave trading bitches, my village, and my faction, okay, basically, my royal family faction, okay, they sided with the Christians on a matter of morality, not in terms of taking slaves. They were, in fact, perhaps the most pronounced force because of the size of the village that was resisting the slave trade. So it's a little confusing. Some people make the despicable argument, especially because they're pagan witch doctor trash, kind of new age bitches, that, oh, because they sided with the Christians, they were wrong. Oh, and that makes the slave trader, witch doctor, rapist, kind of satanic bitches, right? Are you fucking insane? Of course, you're an idiot if you don't see it my way. Of course, there's no time for that nonsense. All right. A band of Cujo's soldiers hid in a limestone cave. Look up limestone and the significance to Egypt. Now called Peace Cave, and placed a loose rock on the path outside. The British soldiers clattered the rock as they passed while the Maroons waited, tallying their number. Then one of the Maroons emerged and signaled to the others in the surrounding hills by blowing on into an ebeng, a bellowing instrument carved from a painted green cow horn. Maroon fighters flooded the valley from every direction and massacred the British soldiers. Notice the cow horn. This is not necessarily damning, but there's something to it. Legend has it that only one British soldier was spared, sent home with his ear in his hand to tell his superiors what had occurred. If this happened, it was symbolic, obviously. Shortly after the slaughter, the British signed a treaty with the Maroons, granting them their remote territory. Cujo was made chief commander of nearby Trelawney town, and their freedom a full century before official emancipation. Okay, so who are the real freedom fighters, and who are the beta male bitches that you bootlick to? Absolutely disgraceful. Today, the 500 or so Maroons of a kampong town comprise a sovereign nation inside of Jamaica. Just over the hill from where phizēʻä and the colonel met are the childhood homes of Usain Bolt and Veronica Campbell Brown. These are athletes, I believe. Maroons in a kampong town do not hesitate to claim them as members do not hesitate to claim them as members of their lineage. So this highlights the connection between the sprinter, right, who has this. They also explore how he has fast twitch muscles, which impressed the lab that he went to as him having the most fast twitch muscles that they've ever seen, right? So this is everything to do with the warrior gene connection with athletes. But these are also beta male athletes who are playing ball with the system. They don't have the mind, body, soul intact, right? They are willing to play ball. These are the lesser. These are basically the Europeans and all these other races racing some of their finer athletes against, when you look at their culture, right? Their culture producing certain warriors in a certain manner, racing the beta males of my culture who happen to be related to warriors. That is significant. They don't have my heart. They don't have my mind. They are basically good ones who happen to have a certain physical attributes that make them Olympic athletes. You're an idiot if you think that an Olympic athlete could outmaneuver me. I wouldn't surgically fucking strike them and strike them effectively. And that people like my dads who are surgeons and blacksmiths wouldn't forge weapons that are perfectly suited for me, my body type, and my tactics to strike them effectively. Look at the cat of Heliopolis. It's a weapon that's more suited for someone like me, which he's cutting off the head of the serpent, which is referred to as the Leviathan in the Bible, the embodiment of primordial chaos. No one can argue that there was a selection of the fittest slaves, phizēʻä says. He has seen some of the historical records himself, interviewed experts on the island, and co-authored papers on the demographics of the Jamaican slave trade. The guys selling the slaves were their neighbors, he said. So basically, these are some of the more suited warriors who are beneath my royal family in terms of warrior prowess. You're an idiot if you miss that. These aren't, the slaves are not the elite forces, the best of the best, but rather they include some of the elite forces of the African martial arts system. Okay, they're not the best of the best. That is Pharaoh. That is Narmer, right? And the Narmer palette really emphasizes the difference between the royal family and his followers.